Welcome friends to this new video of Sapphire Talks English. In this video, we shall discuss the ruling of the US Supreme Court on President Trump's tariffs. On 20th February 2026, the US Supreme Court ruled in favor of shutting down the tariffs. The verdict was 6 in favor of shutting down and 3 against it. The US Supreme Court and in particular Chief Justice Mr. John Roberts were clearly of the view that the tariffs imposed by President Trump under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 were unlawful, and he had abrogated to himself the powers which were actually reserved for the Congress. Furthermore, this particular act, that is the IEEPA Act, empowers the US President to regulate international economic transactions during a declared national emergency when the country, that is when the United States, was facing unusual and extraordinary threats. The US Supreme Court was categorical that none such situation existed as on date. Furthermore, the US Supreme Court was also categorical that the power belonged to the US Congress and not to the US President to be exercised exclusively and in such a sweeping fashion. Many of us may think why President Trump did not approach the Congress in the first place rather than trying to impose the tariffs by an executive order. First, let us understand the structure of the US democracy a little bit. The US democracy rests upon three pillars, which are: first, the executive led by the president; second is the legislature, which has the upper house, which is the Senate, the lower house, which is the Congress, and third is the judiciary led by the US Supreme Court. Now, for Mr. Trump to pass the tariffs through the US Congress, that is the lower house of the US legislature, he would require at least a simple majority. But the majority that is party, that is the Republicans, enjoy in the US Congress is very thin. It's about 2 or 3 people at any given point in time. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, in the US Congress, there is no system of a party whip, which means that the representatives from both the parties, that is the Democrats as well as the Republicans, can vote as they please and not necessarily follow the party line in any vote that is called for. So Mr. Trump was definitely under the impression that if he had put the tariffs to test at the US Congress, the US Congress in all likelihood would not have allowed those tariffs to pass. That is the primary reason on account of which President Trump chose to impose the tariffs by an executive order rather than passing them through the Congress as was required under the IEEPA Act. Surprisingly, the US Supreme Court in their order have not clarified whether the tariffs which have been illegally collected via an executive order should be retained by the government or they should be refunded. Ultimately, the tariffs have been illegally collected from the US consumers and the money should go back to them. However, President Trump appears in no mood to relent, and he has stated very clearly that those who would like to have the tariffs restored back to them would then have to fight a protracted legal battle through the US court system. Furthermore, definitely the tariffs will hereafter not be imposed after the Supreme Court order. But whatever has been collected earlier, it is very unlikely that the US government, especially under President Trump, as was widely expected, was furious with the order. He called the ruling as deeply disappointing and a disgrace. Furthermore, he did not mince words and he actually called the US Supreme Court judges as fools, dogs, and unpatriotic. As was expected, Mr. Trump did not relent. Within a few hours, he used another act, that is Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, to impose 10% tariffs on all nations alike. Within a few hours, he raised this 10% tariff to 15%. However, this particular section, that is Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, has some inherent limitations. First and foremost, the rate cannot exceed 15%, and furthermore, the duration of this levy cannot be more than 150 days. So one would definitely expect that during the remainder of Mr. Trump's tenure, this up and down and this playing around with tariffs will continue. Certainly, we can't expect any certainty in tariffs or in any US policy for that matter, as long as Mr. Trump is holding office in the USA. Like always, India has treated this decision of the US Supreme Court calmly and with a lot of equanimity. The Indian side has postponed their meeting with their US counterparts for trade negotiations and for finalizing the framework agreement, which was announced earlier this month. Under the framework agreement, Mr. Trump had reduced India's tariffs from 15% to 18%. But as of just now, India would be covered under a blanket 15% tariff as are applicable to all other countries. India has correctly postponed any further negotiations on the trade deal until some certainty and some signal is coming out of Washington regarding how Mr. Trump wishes to proceed ahead, in particular regarding India. So what can be said about the future of the India-US trade relations, or in fact US-India relations in general, or to take it further, the relations of the United States with the entire world? The only thing that can be said with certainty as far as the US behavior is concerned is that the only thing that is certain is uncertainty. How the US will behave and how Mr. Trump will react to the situations in the coming 3 years of his presidency is highly uncertain. I think India is following a very correct policy of taking things calmly and taking things as and when they come. Let's see if there's any further development on this topic. I will keep you posted. Thanks for watching my video. If you have found the video interesting, please like this video. Please subscribe to our channel, and I'll take your leave until the next video. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, Vande Mataram.